Our short reading is by Joy Harjo. A beloved Indigenous poet, Joy Harjo served 3 terms as 23rd Poet Laureate of the United States from 2019 to 2022. This is Remember by Joy Harjo. Remember the sky you were born under. Know each of the star stories. Remember the moon. Know who she is. Remember the sun's birth at dawn. That's the strongest point in time. Remember sundown and the giving away tonight. Remember your birth, how your mother struggled to give you form and breath. You are evidence of her life and her mother's and hers. Remember your father. He is your life also. Remember the earth whose skin you are. Red earth, black earth, yellow earth, white earth, brown earth. We are earth. Remember the plants, trees, animal life, who all have their tribes, their families, their histories too. Talk to them. Listen to them. They are alive poems. Remember the wind. Remember her voice. She knows the origin of this universe. Remember, you are all people and all people are you. Remember, you are this universe and this universe is you. Remember, all is in motion, is growing, is you. Remember, language comes from this. Remember the dance, language, that is life is. Remember. Our guest speaker, Juan Arambula, is the son of immigrant farm workers and spent his youth harvesting crops with his family. He attended Harvard University as an undergraduate, received a master's degree from Stanford University and a Juris Doctorate from the University of California, Berkeley. He returned to invest his time and talent in the Fresno County area. Juan also served as a board member of the Fresno Unified School District for many years before being elected to California State Assembly 31st District, serving from 2004 to 2010. He is now comfortably retired, entertained with his grandchildren and his hobbies, principally photography. He is the author of the most recently published collection of reflections entitled My Heartstrings. Please welcome guest speaker Juan Arambula.
Good morning. Much has changed since the last time I was here. And not long ago, we just finished going through the COVID crisis. And right before it began, our daughter, asked me if she gave me a present. She said, "Dad, would you write a story? If I sent you a question every week, would you write a story and share it with your children and grandchildren?" And that was a blessing because during the worst of the COVID crisis, I was writing stories. And I didn't realize that they would be so many. And after a while, I decided to try to bundle them together and put them in a book. I'd like to read a little bit from the book, if I may. This story is called Pronouns. I know who I am, but who are you? I ask this because recently I've been grappling with a relatively new phenomena, at least for me. What pronoun should I use when referring to someone, and how is it that he, she, or they want to be seen by others? Several friends with children who don't feel they fit into the traditional definitions have brought this up recently. And pronouns for some are now the in thing. And my generation, to be honest, is a bit perplexed and confused by what we see going on. Like our friends, I too want to understand and accept what I only now dimly see. For us, growing up, pronouns had a very different meaning. And I hope you understand, my ignorance is not a sign of disrespect. My attempt to understand comes from a desire to welcome everyone into our circle of humanity. For some like me, the effort does not come easy, and I acknowledge some individuals may not even want to make the effort. I share these inchoate thoughts with some trepidation, fearing they could be taken out of context or given a meaning that was not intended. Nevertheless, after all these years on this earth, I share these observations and thoughts in the hope that we can welcome everyone into our tribe, pronouns and all, because humanity will benefit from everyone's talents and contributions. Optimistic? Yes. That's who I am, sometimes. I say sometimes because I believe that word is key to my effort to understand pronouns. Remember that old TV commercial for a candy bar that said, sometimes you feel like a nut, sometimes you don't. Perhaps saying someone is either male or female is putting them in a box. They sometimes don't belong there, and to say you are one thing and not another implies a limitation, a rigid definition of who we are and what we should be like. And if you are one, you can't be the other. Most important of all, it ignores that we are individuals, unique and never to be seen again on this or any other planet. I grew up during a time that was not very tolerant of differences. Not only was the TV all 2 channels in black and white, so were our social views on skin color or sexual orientation. Even then, as a youngster, I was not comfortable with the jokes and the sneers at the expense of others. To be cut down was an attempt to put someone in their place, to define and limit who they were, and served to exclude them from everyone else inside the circle. Us against them. You had to be a 0 or a 1. The funny thing is that in computer talk, zeros and ones can be combined into infinite forms of software that can perform miraculous things, from flying a spaceship to sending money around the world to letting the grandkids grab a new app. And with time, our social attitudes have begun to soften. Thankfully, we are much more accepting and welcoming of different sexual orientations. People's minds have changed, as has society itself, and legal rights extended to formerly unprotected groups. But, to use an old farm saying, we still have a long road to hoe. You see, having taken a renewed interest in our country's history, combined with my own personal experiences over the last 7 decades, I have begun to observe a pattern in our development as a nation. We began with lofty ideals regarding the rights of every individual, including the pursuit of happiness. But soon thereafter, we struggled with slavery and the notion that one person was only worth a fraction of another, simply because of the color of their skin. It was hard work to draft the Constitution, but it has been and continues to be even harder work to make it live up to its ideals. We continue to see this played out in different forms, from efforts to curtail voting, to different ways of treating law enforcement practices, and that seem to fall disproportionately on some groups. As we continue to move forward, though, toward fairness and inclusion, sometimes progress can seem a mirage, and persistence can only be maintained by a leap of faith. I have read of the long struggle for women to gain the right to vote and the incredible bravery and persistence of their movement. I lived through the passage of the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act in the 1960s, but the current U.S. Supreme Court is reluctant and unlikely to support strong enforcement of those provisions, and indeed seems eager to roll the clock back. I mention this to illustrate that while we have been moving forward toward a broader and more inclusive nation, one that mirrors the lofty goals of our Constitution, we must also acknowledge our past mistakes and critically examine current state of affairs. And the positive changes that we have seen did not happen overnight. They came, in fact, through strong advocacy. Some folks had to speak up and let their voices be heard, and many paid the price for making others uncomfortable. Good trouble, in other words. Plus, many of these changes were ushered in only after changes that had already occurred in social attitudes. You see, politicians don't tend to be leaders. They don't want to get ahead of their constituents, and most prefer to play it safe until they're sure the coast is clear. As a friend of mine, a former Los Angeles legislator, said, referring to his local politics, "I wait until the bullets stop flying before I raise my head." To make significant shifts in public perception and mood often requires leaders, people willing to get ahead of the crowd, to be able to scout ahead to see what lies ahead, and then return to the group and convince them where to go and help guide them to their destination. Many politicians are good people, but they are not risk takers. Instead, they often wait to see where the crowd is going and then rush up to the front and say, "Let me lead you." Leadership, to me, requires courage and conviction. If you want to lead, you need to get out in front, and it helps if you're not too worried about getting reelected. I think of this in the context of our discussion of binary and non-binary. While it makes me uncomfortable to discuss the subject, I appreciate those voices who are raising this issue. I appreciate because these folks, you are increasing public awareness of this cause, even while causing some discomfort to others. Why? I think it's because you believe in the importance and the desire to be heard. You see, I believe in the inherent goodness and dignity of individual human beings. I know not everyone acts with pristine motives, and we all are often a roiling combination of deeply held beliefs and strong emotions. But we are not locked into being one person or another. To have empathy for another human being is not male or female. To protect our young ones, to honor our elders, these are not masculine or feminine things. They are what make us unique human beings, unique individuals. They connect us to each other and to our collective destiny as members of the human race. Thus, I believe this use of pronouns is an attempt to help others better understand who each person is and to share with others how we view ourselves. This, at a very basic level, seems like a good thing. So, remember that we are all a unique combination of zeros and ones, which can and will morph over time. We are not one or the other, because sometimes we feel like a nut and sometimes we don't. We should all rejoice in our individuality and blend it with our collective belonging. Perhaps the poet Walt Whitman said it best when he wrote, "I hear America singing, the varied carols I hear, each singing what belongs to him or her and to none else, singing with open mouths their strong, melodious songs." So, regardless of what personal preference of pronouns you have, belt out your song. You were made for it, and we need your voice, regardless of what pronoun you choose. This is a story that I wrote for my grandchildren. The book, in fact, is all dedicated to my grandchildren. But on a personal note, I woke up the other day and I was 70. OMG, as some people now text. I am now 70 years old. Am I supposed to feel any differently? I felt the same as I did when I was 69. And even though I'm 70, I'm still the same person as 69 and 68 and 67 and all the way back. As Sandra Cisneros wrote in her story 11, what we are not told when we have a birthday is that we are still the same person and all the birthdays before us. So when I opened my eyes, it was the same day. It was the same thing as the day before, because it wasn't like I was a 70-year-old stranger or a new me. Same memories, although somewhat faded, and same body, although that was beginning to fail, because all the days before me still lay underneath my brand new birthday. So let's say on a particular day, I said or did something really dumb. That is still with me when I'm 70. When I was 5 and lost in a big city in Mexico with millions of people around me, that's when I wanted the warmth and comfort of a 5-year-old. Although I had the presence of mind to use my few pesos to buy oranges and peanuts as I walked across the city, in case no one could find me, and the sassiness to find my way back home all by myself. I came home to my aunt's house, and she said, "Where's your parents?" I said, "I don't know, they're lost. I know where I am." Although if I hadn't found my way home, I probably would have been crying like my 2-year-old self. Speaking of crying, being 70 is like an onion with layers and layers beneath. Or maybe like the rings of a tree which grow so slow that you can't see the rings appear. But with the passage of time, they can tell you how many seasons they've seen, and which ones were good ones and bad ones, barely hanging on or flourishing. I don't feel 70 just yet, although I suspect I'll warm up to it as the months go by. And I don't feel wise yet either. Maybe when I'm 71 or 72. I would like to live a long time, not because I enjoy getting old. Quite the contrary, getting old is not easy. If only I knew then what I know now. I want to get old, though, so that I can begin to forget all the dumb and crazy things I have done in my life, especially all the things I did not do during all those years. I wish I had been able to take better care of my father before he passed away. I was going to get him a small farm where he could comfortably spend his last years. He grew up in the countryside and was more comfortable there than in a city. I always wanted to get him that place, and I always meant to. There was going to be time later, I told myself, but that time never came. I didn't realize he was on a different schedule, as if my timeline trumped his, and he could just wait until I was ready. Circumstances also overwhelmed us, at first trying to finish school and later trying to establish myself in my career. A small and growing family made it even easier to justify putting things off. Even though he has been laid to rest for many years now, I still feel remorse and regret every year, even on my new birthday. And as I look at the pictures I have of him, I remember how hard his life was. And in a strange way, I want him to know that his son was successful. Even though I didn't learn how to hitch the plow to the ox, couldn't figure out the bushels of manure needed to plant next year's corn crop, nor sharpen the blade to butcher a pig. I never got around to connecting with him and his generation because of my pursuit of something more than corn planted in red dirt with unreliable and capricious rains. As time has gone on, however, we add more and more layers to that onion, and the pain and the regret begins to recede, as if the edges are being worn off, rounded out in our memories. With my mother, in her later years, we stepped forward, my wife and I, and accepted primary responsibility. But even then, my duties often required me to be away. One time, when I had been ordered to the doghouse in Sacramento, I was in my office speaking on the phone to my mother. She was reportedly agitated and irritable with her caregiver, and I was asked to speak with her to calm things down. At one point, I threatened her to get in the car and drive the 2.5 hours back home and spank her if she didn't behave immediately. And I was overwhelmed by a mixture of emotions, ranging from, how could I say that to my mother, to, where are my keys, because I'm going right now. Even today, the thought of threatening to spank my mother because she was misbehaving makes me look for the nearest hole to jump in. And yet, I couldn't always be there for her and caring for her in our home we ultimately had no choice but to find a residential facility for her. I wish I had not been so consumed with seeking and holding office. Even more of an imposition than the elections, as hard as they were for me and my family, was the day-to-day service for many long years between elections, working hard to serve well and honorably. The family bore the brunt, however. And had I known the price of admission, I might have made different choices. I hope my personal ambition was not a significant factor. I don't think it was. It just seemed the right thing to do, even if it was against my better judgment and against the prevailing odds. Did I have a choice, or did I dream I had a choice? Was the need truly so great and the responsibility so immense that there was little to debate? I felt compelled to do it at the time, but I have begun to wonder otherwise. Maybe it was necessary for me to jump off the cliff holding my wife's hand and run for office, first the school board, where I figured I could fix everything and move on with my life. But as Nancy will attest, that was not so easy. And then, almost as an afterthought, I served on the County Board of Supervisors and in state government. It may have been what was needed, but the circumstances required the greatest patience and self-control. I most wanted to advocate and change the world, or at least make the school district more responsive to poor and immigrant parents and children. I also had to keep in mind that I was one of the first Latino elected officials, and I wanted to do well, not just for me, but for those that could follow. Which meant I governed from the middle. I tried to govern in a way that represented the vast majority of people, but serving in office has a certain amount of responsibility. Just like cutting into the onion brings tears. Today, I no longer wonder, what if I had pursued my legal career? Would I be looking for a judgeship as friends are doing? The law partnership that I left? To dream, perhaps, of a Court of Appeals or a Supreme Court position? What if I had stayed in politics? It may seem hard to picture now, because I usually have a scruffy beard and a chin my granddaughter said was fluffy. She wanted to say fat, but she was too nice. And my wife says quite often, I have worn a pair of pants for too many days already. But I was successful during the time. In my first election, it was an at-large election for the third largest school district in the state. And we had just moved in to town a few years before. So I felt honored to have that privilege of serving. And I retired having won 7 consecutive elections, representing roughly about 500,000 people here in Fresno County. It was no fun, but it seemed worth the effort at the time. Many of the people I used to work with, I now see on television addressing some question of the day. For a time, I saw myself in their shoes. And yet, I am no longer troubled by what ifs or could haves or should haves. I have learned there is a time to slow down. slow down the ambitions, and accept the transition to new generations. After all, I'm now 70, and I have my hobbies, I have a loving wife, and I have a gaggle of grandchildren. I am beginning to accept that there are new and different challenges awaiting me, and better understand that while all of those previous layers of the onion are important and will remain a part of who I am, it is the newest level, the husband, the father, the grandfather, that now interests me the most, because it is this last layer that holds it all together. I don't think I turned into an onion at 70. I think I was an onion all along. I just now happen to be a 70-year-old onion. And if I may, I have a prayer for our grandchildren. And I offer this prayer unconditionally and lovingly for them. I pray that you will learn to be bridges, to be the connection between people from different backgrounds, much like a bridge connects one side of the river to the other. I pray that you understand the world needs connectors, individuals like you who can bridge differences between people and places in an increasingly connected world, and who can accept the sincerity of others, even while respectfully and forcefully disagreeing, especially while disagreeing. I pray that you learn to be stubborn, especially when someone is trying to make you do something you don't want to do and that you know is wrong. Or when someone says you can't do something that you do want to do, whether it's getting a black belt or playing in the marching band. Listen to your heart, not what anyone else says. Learn when to dig in your heels and say no, but also learn that when you have made a mistake, be willing to turn around instead of staying stubborn for no good reason. Pay close attention to these two, and when you are stubborn for the right reason, be so stubborn that a mule would be proud of you. I pray that you will be surrounded by laughter and warmth and friendship throughout your lives, and that you find a life partner to stand by your side, a partner that complements you and fulfills you. I pray that you will find a community to belong to, a place where you can be who you are, and if you're not sure, a place where you can find out. While you should be good students, I tell my grandchildren, I pray you also learn the benefits of silence, of listening to others and to yourself, because beyond the surface, going beyond the surface to get to the bottom of things and discovering your true value. I pray that each of you finds a job that doesn't feel like work. Learn a career, maybe several. May your work absorb you so much that time slows down. I pray you continue to learn throughout your life, like following breadcrumbs. I pray that you stay humble. You are quick and insightful with such wide-eyed innocence. You have every reason to be proud of yourselves. From your reading, your music, and your laughter, and your caring and thoughtfulness, most of the time anyway. Your quick and bright minds and your hearts seem to have no bottom. I pray you will continue to learn and grow in your own way and at your own pace, and that, surprising yourself, you even let others recognize your talents and your contributions. But I pray just as much that you never get a big head and that you always stay humble. Finally, as a grandfather, I pray that you can find the right balance between, I pray that I can find the right balance between providing you opportunities in life and letting you figure things out for yourself. I want you to have the chance to try different things and not be afraid to take chances. But I also want you to understand, you have the obligation to work hard to make your dreams come true. By letting people see who you are, who you really are, and humbly accepting the gifts you have been given, I pray you will find your special place in life, and in the fullness of time, grow to be the kind of person only you can be. That is what I pray for today, as I have throughout your lifetimes, from the time I first held you in my arms. As I pray, I remember how different your lives will be than mine. As I reflect on the distance between my life and that of my parents, I pray you will be kept safe, and your heart and your spirit remains strong. As I pray this, as you hurl into the future and explore the mysteries around you, I pray this as you ride your bikes, as you finish yet another book, as you belt out a song whose lyrics you have memorized, and as you learn to drive and begin to think about college and boys and girls and what lies beyond. My prayers are often answered when you ask me an innocent but profound question, or when you blurt out your affection or your sense of indignation. And when you play in the band, or when you kick a goal, or take on an unknown challenge, when you get knocked down and you get up to shake it off. Because in you, I see the next spring and the ones after that, along with opportunities and challenges previously unseen. But never take anything for granted. As the Grateful Dead sing, when life looks like Easy Street, there is danger at the door. Your lives will be unlike mine, full of challenges far different from the ones I have known. In you, I see unfulfilled dreams coming to life, emerging from your hearts, and informed by your intelligence and character. In you, I see my prayers being answered. I see the land being reforested as a new generation of trees springs up. Their roots are firmly in the ground, and the branches and the leaves wave in the breeze and reach up to the sky. As they grow, the earth breathes easier, and my heart grows lighter. You are part of the forest, and this grandfather's prayers are answered as you become stronger with each passing year. And that's why I keep singing my grandfather's prayer for you. Thank you.